Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Bright Side of Beauty podcast presented by Beyond Skin Aesthetics. I'm your host, Delaney, or as Instagram knows me, Skin by Delaney Danielle. And today we are talking with my business coach, a turned friend, sometimes therapist, depending on the meeting that we're having and whatever mental blocks I'm having as we go through. I'm preparing for these different talks that I'm having or different maybe team meetings or situations in life. She just is my guide through all things and helps to talk me through it and working on my communication. And she is my voice of impact coach, as well as was my business coach with KLC. Please help me welcome to the Bright Side of Beauty, Krista. Hi, Krista.
Hi. Oh
I'm
my gosh,
so
Delaney,
happy to have
it's
you.
so good to see you.
It's so good to see you too. And I've been looking forward to this so much. As you know, in our guest from episode 6, Alicia Merlot and I love you so much, and we have learned so much from you, and we talk about you all the time to everyone. So this was just an episode in the making. We actually mentioned you in episode 6 that at this point will have dropped by the time that this episode drops. But with that, we get so many questions about how we prepare for our different conferences that we're going to, or live events or virtual events. I get questions about how to communicate with my team from a, I guess, younger standpoint as, you know, managing partner of a business at 28. That's sometimes that has its own challenges to it as well. And really just communication in general with whether it's patients or other, partners in business and then on a stage and all of the above. And you've been such a guide through that. So I'm so excited to have you here today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. You're like my number one grade A student.
Oh, thanks. I try to be like the princess of everything.
You.
I know. I miss seeing you. I feel like I used to spend so much time with you, and now it's really around events that we're able to hone in and, work on very specific things versus when we used to have our weekly and sometimes bi-weekly meetings, or I guess double meetings. Sometimes I would see you 2 or 3 times a week. I got so much Krista time there for a while. Well, I would love to start with, I have gotten so much away from KLC and being a part of the Pop Leadership Academy, and then also Voice of Impact, which was really actually how I started working with KLC. Was I was looking for a program like Voice of Impact to help me prepare for the exciting year ahead that has now almost completely passed us at this point. It's crazy. But if we could, I would love to start with a little bit about you, a little bit about KLC, what KLC's mission is, and all the things.
Sure. So let me talk a little bit first about KLC, and then I'll talk a little bit more personally about myself. So KLC, those of you who don't know it, it's the premier business leadership coaching company for powerhouse women like Delaney in aesthetics and wellness. And our mission is to help the next 1,000 intentional and inspired women cross the next $1 million milestone in their business. So just about the flagship program, our flagship program is the Pop Leadership Academy that Delaney was a part of. And it's designed to help female entrepreneurs who are scaling past the $1 million milestone to build a self-led company that is so well operationalized that we joke their grandma can come in and run a shift in the business. So that's something that it's our claim to fame there. So my role at KLC is a strategic growth advisor, and I specialize in executive leadership and communication. Just to list a few of my core areas of specialization, public speaking and dynamic presence, team engagement, leadership mindset through challenging times. That's a big one. Handling difficult conversations with employees. This is a huge one, something I'm, also very passionate about, comes up a lot in our academy and also in Voice of Impact. Intra-office communication, whether that be just leading group meetings, talking to your team, onboarding, that's a big one, how to interview and really speak to your new employee coming into your ecosystem. And of course, also motivation. How do you motivate your employees? How do you speak to them in a way that is going to get that fire lit under their butts? So those are some of my specialties as a strategic growth advisor at KLC and within Voice of Impact as well. My personal background, just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm originally from New York City. I have a background in performance and acting. And I also have education in psychoanalysis and communication within corporate America. So I've sort of married all of these skills together and really brought it to the table for KLC to be like, hey, these are some things that I'm really passionate about. What can we do with them? So that's really how some of the Voice of Impact came to be, was a lot of these bringing together of certain skills.
In perfect timing too. So I actually I want to say it was last December, right before Christmas, I reached out to Kaylee, and I had met Kaylee Lindholm, for those that don't know Kaylee. Yes. I had met Kaylee at Aesthetic Next last year. And so I reached out to her right around Christmas time, and I said, this is the type of program that I'm looking for. I'm not sure if KLC has that option. And she was like, actually, stay tuned for that very, very soon. We're rolling out this new thing, and I think that it is exactly what you were looking for. She could not have been more right. You could not have been a more perfect coach for me and where I was at in my journey and preparation. And what's so funny too is looking at it, because now you have worked with myself and with my dear friend Alicia Merlot, and to say we are at two different sides of the industry when it comes to experience on stage, but also just where we're coming in. I'm coming in from basically the treatment room perspective of things a lot of the times, and from the business owner perspective, and she's coming at it from more of the business development and product development side of things. And somehow you just meet every single person exactly where they're at to help them develop in the best way possible and just help them flourish. And I feel like you just took two flowers and made us bloom into who we are this year. And it's really cool to see that work pay off. But really, purpose of today is for us to be able to talk about the Voice of Impact program. And this is a question that both Alicia and I have gotten, and we actually got when I had put the question box up for her episode with me a couple of weeks ago, of how do you prepare for getting on stage? And for both of us, Voice of Impact was a huge part of that. If not, for me, that was the main focus for me on getting ready for being on stage. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about Voice of Impact as a program, and then we can kind of dive in further from there.
Sure. So, okay, I'll tell you about the birth of Voice of Impact and how it came to be. But let's first talk about, what is our primary goal. So our primary goal through the work we do at KLC is helping women reach their highest potential, right? So many of our clients are being asked and desire to share their thought leadership with the world, their stories with the world. So we wanted to help them in the best way to prepare for and most effectively deliver their message to an audience. So I remember when I first came on to KLC, and Kaylee and I went to a conference, and we sat there, and I was taking in a lot of different people speaking. There was like over 150 faculty members, and we started talking, and we were like, there's women on stage talking about a plethora of different things, cutting edge techniques, all sorts of stories and sciences. And then we, watch, PowerPoint presentation after PowerPoint presentation. And we kind of turned to each other and we're like, maybe these talks could be more dynamic. What if someone got on stage and actually spoke about how to give a talk? What if someone led a program that actually helped these women share their messages, share their stories in a more interesting, dynamic, and engaging way? And that was sort of how our brainchild came to be, Voice of Impact. And, I have to credit like so much of this to Kaylee, because as my mentor and founder of KLC, she was really able to see my skill set and see what I felt passionate about. And she was able to use that for the gain of all of our clients and all of the people that pass through Voice of Impact and KLC. So I really, have to thank her for being my mentor and really empowering me to find my own mission within the KLC mission, which is to help those incredibly inspired and intentional women tell their stories and share their voice and really find their place on stage that they so rightfully deserve. So that's really how Voice of Impact came to be. Now, Voice of Impact, to be a little bit more specific, it is a 6-week private coaching program where elite business leaders in aesthetics and wellness, they come to unlock their powerful presence, if you will, and they become dynamic communicators on stage, in leadership, and even online. Maybe your thing is social media. So, we help with all of those facets.
And it really does break up into all those different facets. I mean, I've applied it to every single area of our business, including actually in the office of how to communicate with the rest of my team and patients. I feel like it really does just take it to the next level and give you that confidence to step firmly into. It's like we all as providers know that we know our stuff. But when it comes to actually speaking it, all of a sudden self-doubt creeps in. Or worrying that we're not going to communicate our thoughts and our knowledge in the best way, and it's going to come across where then it's not correct in a way. So what I gained significantly was the confidence to then go out and share this knowledge that I have in a dynamic way where people are going to receive it as, best as possible in a way. And in my case, of course, bringing a couple of tears to the stage because I can't do anything without tears apparently, but it brought it to that next level. And I love that is, an option now for leaders out there to access.
Absolutely. And sometimes it pains me to really get to know these incredible women who have such powerful stories and have lived such full lives, and they don't have the confidence to say, hey, I actually do deserve to be on stage. I do deserve to tell my story. It will actually help people. It will impact people. And so that's sometimes me just lifting that barrier of entry to people. Sometimes that's all it takes. And then, we're off to the races. When I first met you, Delaney, just to talk a little bit about you as my superstar student, there was a bit of imposter syndrome when you first came in, but you had so much important and valuable, not just information, but experience that was so profound and vulnerable and relatable that I was like, whoa, this girl has to get on stage. This girl has to speak. This is something that's going to benefit the masses. So, as soon as I recognize that in someone, I'm even more committed to being like, all right, let's get you comfortable. Let's get you confident and to a place where you believe in yourself and you believe that you deserve to have a voice.
And that's why I think I've dubbed you as my part-time therapist in a way through this whole program, is because you really were able to see me as the person and as the leader and as the unlocked potential that just had to step into that and decide to step into that, and then helping me to take that very first step, because it's almost like toddler steps. Like I had to stumble into it in a way before I was able to really run with it. And it's been such a fun journey to step into that. And you're absolutely right. I started off with so much imposter syndrome. And I think that part of that was because of my age. Part of that was because I was stepping into a new role with our business where I was going to be more in line with, our owners as a managing partner, Whereas before, I was kind of like that one tier down in a way. And that was kind of intimidating to step up and be like, okay, I always felt like I was an equal, but now I'm being viewed as an equal. And there's some weight to that. So what does that look like? And how do I show up the best possible? And, then that also transferred onto the stage. And for me, I think the imposter syndrome side for actually going to these different conferences is you walk in and you may be next to an Alicia Merlot that has 20 plus years experience and is just so brilliant from so many different sides. And that comparison trap kind of steps in where you might be bringing those fresh perspectives. And I love that that's something that both Alicia and then Heather Goodchild from Color Science both say is, as you're leveling up, no matter what level you're at, you're bringing in something to the equation so that you belong at the table. You might just be the fresh perspective. You might be thinking about things in a different way versus being locked into this is how we've always done it, or, this has worked in the past. Whereas, I can look to some that may have a little bit more seniority in their position and like in their role with certain companies or, in certain treatments, they've been doing it for longer than I have, where I can look to them and learn from them as well, but I still have a place at the table. And that's where this, working with Voice of Impact was able to bring that out of me, where I did have something to share and something that was serving to others, and the mindset behind the giver's heart. I love that that is such a foundational piece of the program, is really focusing on the giver's heart. What are you able to provide to your community? Because that's where our minds should be when we're stepping onto it. There's always the glitz and the glam and having your name in lights and all the stuff, but when you approach it from that giver's heart, it unlocks a whole new side of yourself as well, where you're really looking into like, okay, why am I in this? What do I have to give and what do I want to give to the world that is kind of spreading that light per se?
Absolutely. And let me just say, Alicia Merlot, what a rock star. What a pleasure it was to work with her. And she's so, just like you, Delaney, I think you do share some things in common. You're both willing to be vulnerable and to share yourself. And I think that that's what makes both of you such powerful speakers. And gosh, it's such a pleasure to work with Alicia for sure. I think that you speak to something that's so important to highlight, which is the idea that so many people come to me and they say, well, I don't want to speak, or I don't want to do that podcast, or I don't want to put myself out there because there's somebody out there that does it better or knows more. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, that's where you have it all wrong. You don't have to be the top of your, whatever you're doing or the field or whatever in order to have a place on stage. There is a seat at the table, like you said, for everyone, and everyone has unique experiences, a unique perspective, and a unique voice. And I think authenticity is what we're really going for here. I think that's really what we're highlighting in Voice of Impact, is somebody's authenticity. And that's what's going to give them that dynamic and impactful voice. So, and you speak to the giver's heart, which I'm so passionate about, because it wipes away, when we get in touch with that, it wipes away so many of our nerves and so much of that imposter syndrome. And I do want to talk a little bit about the pillars of Voice of Impact, because connection is one of them. And the giver's heart definitely does speak to that. So we use the acronym ACE, ACE. And that's really the pillar of how we've developed the Voice of Impact and its modules. So the first part is working on that mind frame reset. It's A for assurance. So we work on getting you self-assured and grounded in what you have to offer and how it will service your audience and the people that you lead. There's absolutely a bit of the giver's heart within that as well. It's recognizing that your stories, your knowledge, and your life perspective is actually going to help people. And that's something that is sometimes harder to it's harder for the person to see. It's easier for an outsider to see, for me to see. I can pull out your nuggets of gold of experience, but there's many women who I talk to who are like, I don't think I'm interesting enough. I don't think my story's interesting enough to be on stage. I don't think I'm good enough to be on stage. And then we really unpack that. And that's why Delaney jokes that I'm the therapist here because a lot of it is digging deep into someone and figuring out why they don't feel worthy. And I think that really speaks to a lot of leadership, and a lot of what we do at KLC is figuring out, what it takes to be a leader and to invest in ourselves and to believe in ourselves and to allow ourselves a voice and the space to really share our stories. So assurance is step one. That's going to be building your confidence. The second part is the C for connection, which is learning how to use storytelling to connect and convey a powerful message that people like. It resonates with people and people remember. I am so passionate about storytelling. Delaney, you know this. I'm so passionate about storytelling. I'm like, tell me your life story. Tell me what's happened in your life. And we are going to turn this into a moment that you're going to share with your audience. It's going to be a hook. It's going to be something that makes you stand out. And I'm so passionate about storytelling in all facets of business, not just on stage, but maybe your employee made a mistake and they're really, coming down hard on themselves, and you want to share with them that you can empathize with that feeling. So maybe you share a story with them about when you first, started working in aesthetics, or maybe your first job experience where you royally messed up and what that experience was like and how you learned from that. So there's really for storytelling, there's such an opportunity for connection there. And that's really one of the pillars of Voice of Impact. And then of course, E for execution. So we have assurance, connection, and execution, spelling out ACE. And execution is another one that I really nerd out on because that's my performance background. Execution is the how. How are you going to deliver your message? And it's practicing effective body, facial, and vocal techniques to add depth and nuance to the message that you're sharing. So that's really where I come in as the coach. And as Delaney knows, I'll be like, nope, start again. Nope, do it like this. Okay, now you're going to envision this is your audience. Okay, now try it again. Now speak from your diaphragm. So that's really where that technical coaching comes in Voice of Impact. That's really how we work on the execution of your message.
And that
just ramble.
Is so fun. Oh my gosh. Welcome to the club. That's what I do all day, every single day. I was on a call earlier and I was like, oh, it'll be like 30 minutes. And I looked up and it had been an hour and 15 minutes. I was like, yeah, that's my fault. I've done that. And it is story of my life.
That's another. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Concision is something else that we work on, and I think that's definitely a work in progress for passionate people all over the world. That's probably their number one growth area is concision.
Oh yeah, I will take that. The passionate people of the world. I'll put myself in that category for sure. I can go into it, and sometimes I have to stop myself and say, okay, I know you're passionate about this, but that's going to be overwhelming. You have to split it up and give it in doses so that it is digestible to the person that you are speaking to, or to the audience that you are in front of, or whatever the platform may be in that sense. It's kind of like, you can't get on your Instagram story and have 20 slides. You do have to think about like, okay, what are your like 3 or 4? So when you even think about it in the social media standpoint, it's that precision is just as important as, your storytelling side of it. Because stories can take you for ages if you want it to.
All over the place.
Oh yeah, especially when you enjoy it. When you enjoy that execution of the story, you have to pull yourself back in a little bit. Speaking from experience.
Absolutely.
But, for sure. Absolutely. So I did get a couple of questions on Instagram when I did put up that question box.
Oh, so fun.
And I should have sent those over ahead of time. You said, are you going to throw me into curveballs? And I completely forgot about those.
Oh,
so
no, that's okay. Let's get some curveballs. Are you putting it in the chat?
We don't have a chat. I'll just kind of throw them to you if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
perfect. So, first is what is your best piece of advice for those that want to work on their communication skills, not on a stage? So, reading that question, I think that's talking more about like with your team or with your peers and working on communication skills
Sure.
in that sense. Do you have like a starting point or like one golden nugget that you feel like will take people far?
Well, let's see. I don't know if you can really boil it down to one golden nugget, but I do think it's getting in touch with your why. And I think a lot of the times we don't feel like people are behind what we're saying because we don't think about how the message is going to affect them and we don't put ourselves in their shoes. So there's something called the WIFM, which is the what's, oh my gosh, these garbage trucks are coming back. Oh no. Invasion of the garbage trucks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yeah, we're all good on this side.
Okay. Okay. So the WIFM is what's in it for me. And that's something that everyone is thinking about as they hear someone speak in any exchange, truly. So whether you're on a stage or you're in front of your team, we sometimes forget as leaders and speakers that people aren't just listening and hanging on every word just because we're amazing and we're us and we're the boss. They're thinking, how is this going to benefit me? How is this going to affect me in my life? So I always tell people, if you're interested in being more engaging and you're interested in grabbing the attention of more people, I would say not only have a strong why, meaning why are you delivering this message to them? Why are you speaking out loud about this? How will it benefit your audience? So address the benefits of your message with your audience, but also try and have a hook. Try and incorporate something at the top that is going to grab people's attention. Maybe with your team, it's an icebreaker. Maybe you're sharing a funny story with them, something that happened to you while you were coming to work today. Anything that really just will interrupt a monotonous pattern of speech or really grab your audience in. Maybe you want to share a quote with them. I know some leaders love to open meetings by sharing a quote. And now, if you're thinking about a more of a one-on-one conversation with maybe, let's say, one other person, and you're not feeling confident about that, I would say jot some notes down about what is your objective within this exchange. What do you want to come out of this? And I often coach people in this way when they're really struggling through having a difficult conversation with their employee. They're like, oh, I'm so nervous. I don't know where to start. I'm like, well, write your objective now down. What do you want to get out of this? What is the ultimate outcome that you want to get out of this? And then work backwards, reverse engineer how you're going to adjust yourself to get to that objective that you want. So if you are trying to encourage an employee to reach a goal or to really motivate them, I would say absolutely you want to make them feel empowered, make them feel good, make them feel like they're headed in the right direction. So a lot of positive affirmation in there. There's so many techniques. And I would say it really depends on the person you asked. What is the circumstance of their conversation? What is their goal? And how do they want someone to feel? So that's oftentimes the question that I ask myself when I go into a conversation. I don't know if that answered their question per se, but
No, I feel like that brought so much value to that question. And I think in continuation of that exact same point, so when you think about what you want them to feel on that side or how you want them to respond to it, the best communicators are also the best listeners. And
yes.
you become a stronger communicator by being a part of the conversation. So not talking at somebody, but talking with somebody. So having those goals in mind, really coming into things very intentionally and thinking about what's your purpose, but then also listening to understand, not to just respond in the way that you've already scripted out in your head of how it's going to go. I think that is, taking both sides of that, going in with the preparation, but listening, truly listening to understand them will take your communication to the next level with your team.
Yeah. And go in with that giver's heart, go in there with the feeling and attitude that you are contributing something, you're communicating something that's ultimately going to benefit that person. hopefully will benefit. Again, depends on the circumstance, but if you're going into a team meeting or a team training, get in touch with that giver's heart. Get in touch with that side of you that's sharing something that's bigger than you.
Absolutely. Okay, next question is jumping from behind the scenes to more on center stage. So what is your advice for those that would like to take the step onto center stage, on podium, on, whatever platform it may be? What is your advice for them to take those very first steps?
It's a great question. So I would say, first of all, just do it. So there's no way that you are going to truly just slowly, maybe you could dip your toe in it, but just try and go for it. I think breaking that first ice is really important, but don't do it without support. So I would say signing up for a program like Voice of Impact and having a coach to basically hold your hand through that preparation process is going to be really crucial in easing the nerves of doing it for the first time, because nerves are going to be there. The first time you do it, you're going to be excited, you're going to be nervous, there's going to be a lot of adrenaline pumping, and to have the preparation and support of working with someone, I think makes it a lot less painful. So that would be, one thing is seek out support, just try and jump in. That would be another big thing. And also getting in touch with what you are contributing. So again, getting in touch with your why. Why do you want to get on stage? Why? Like, why is it? And really being honest with yourself. Why do you want to be on stage? And if you can answer that question, you might feel a little bit more assured within yourself.
Yes, absolutely. It goes back to the purpose of why you are stepping onto the stage. When you are centered in what your purpose is, you can go into it a lot more confidently. For me, especially, Aesthetic Next was my first time stepping onto such a large stage versus just more of like the local events. Like this was a national conference with multiple different talk tracks. So I had so many different things going through my mind. And for me to be able to center into basically that giver's heart of, okay, I just want to go up there and spread light to the room. I know my stuff. I know the facts. However it is executed, if I don't tell the story the right way, that's okay. If I don't say this joke the right way, that's okay. As long as I'm going up there and I'm spreading the light and people are leaving with that positive feeling, that was my goal. That's not always everyone's goal. They might go in with, I want them to learn this specific thing, and that's what their focus is. But for me, I was able to loosen up a little bit when I focused on that one thing versus the 5 million things that went into what, a talk track may encompass, especially when I had 6 or 7 going on at the same time. It was really I was able to hone in on that, and that purpose behind it brings confidence as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And you did it so beautifully, Delaney. And I would say that you certainly weren't lazy in the process. You were so committed to the preparation work. And I think that really showed in how incredibly you did on stage. And I think that, spoke a lot to a lot of the preparation that you put into it. And then you have to get to a point where you have to trust yourself. I put in all the preparation, and now I'm just going to get on stage and do my best. And like you said, you got to give yourself grace. You got to do it, because if we are constantly in that negative thought, that harsh self-criticizing voice, and if we let that take over, we'll never use our voice. So I really think giving yourself grace and saying, all right, well, I didn't do as well as I wanted to do this time, but you know what? I did my best. I shared my message, and I gave back to my audience. And next time I'm going to do better. That's all you can really do.
Mission accomplished. We checked it off, no matter how it was executed in that sense. As long as we checked those boxes, we can say that was a win. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you the question. What do you think someone should do who's looking to just start speaking? Because you're someone who's, you're well on your way into it, and you just jumped in.
Yeah, I absolutely just jumped in. I would say from being so fresh into those tracks, a year ago at this point, yeah, it was at Aesthetic Next last year that I was in the audience and I saw somebody very dynamic on stage and I said, yeah, I can do that. I'm going to do that next year. I thought that was going to be one talk track, not what ended up being 7. But hey, we dove in head first. We've had so many other engagements that have popped up. But with that, I started by really talking to the friends and mentors that I have in my life and specifically in the industry as well to seek their advice on it, to get connected with, everybody knows somebody, right? Like there's always these little connections into where things could lead. And in my luck, I met Alicia last year, and she is somebody that is so passionate about getting fresh voices onto podium at different events. And so when I was able to share that was a goal of mine with her, she was a wealth of knowledge of, okay, this is how you write an abstract. And these are good podcasts that you can listen to. And these are good people that you can follow that will they're inspiring leaders that will pull that out of you. They're going to inspire you to have your own message. And so really, honestly, I started off with just getting confident in myself enough to say, I'm doing this and I know how I'm going to do it and what my message is going to be. And then once I took that step, that was when I really seeked out a coach. And that's when I reached out to Kaylee. So it was about a 2-month process of listening to podcasts, talking with Alicia, talking with other mentors in the industry that have been on podium or knew somebody to connect me with that could mentor me in a way to prepare me or say, like, this is what the path typically looks like. I'm somebody that is good with going with the flow, but I need to know where the flow is going. So I need to know what we're paddling towards. So in that sense, right. It was nice for me to be able to connect with people that could say, this is typically what the path could look like, whether you go this direction, or this direction, so that I knew what possibilities may be out there. So when I reached out to Kaylee, I was ready to stand in, okay, this is what I'm doing. I am stepping into this leadership. I'm stepping into this power. I'm stepping into this mission. And then literally just doing it. The opportunities, I think that, and this is something I didn't necessarily get on my Instagram, but I get in the question box, but I get all the time, is how do you get the opportunity though? Once you decide that you want to speak on stage or you want to speak for different brands, how do you get those opportunities? And I firmly believe that is in authenticity and personal connection and just genuinely getting to know people, and not in a transactional way of, this is what my goal is, can you help me get there? As much as it is this is where my heart is. This is what my mission is. I feel like we align on that. Do you have any advice for me, or do you know like who I could connect with? People want to help other people innately. Yes. And by being open and just being authentic and actually connecting with people versus just trying to have that transactional, one step ahead of another just to get to a stage, it helped to build me up and I would say cultivate me into the speaker that I was, as well as open the doors. And once one door is open, suddenly it's like the floodgates open and people see you. And when you do show up authentically, it catches an eye, especially in the aesthetics industry, where it can seem like we have to be so cookie cutter in the way that we are presenting or carrying ourselves. And when you show up authentically, suddenly I had so many people that, would from different brands that would turn and be like, you don't look or sound like anybody that we have speaking for us. You don't have the same experience. You have a completely different set of experiences. And we need that different voice with our company. Do we align? And then we were able to kind of back into, do the brands align with what my mission is, what Beyond Skin's mission is? And I think that that's also super important. And when you are aligning what your mission is with the brand or the conference that you're at, that is also when doors start to open, because it's going back to that authenticity. You're staying authentic to who you are and what your brand and mission is. So those doors are going to continue to open in that way. That was a very long answer.
No, I mean, you really explicate how being brave enough to share your stories. Some of our life stories are hard, and
Mm-hmm.
some of us have been through hard things, and I think those stories deserve to be told as well. And I
Yeah.
think that that's what you mean by being authentic. I mean, we work in an industry, whether we like it or not, that values perfection, going with the grain, cookie cutter, everyone sort of being this perfect ideal of beauty, of
Mm-hmm.
a CEO, of an employee, whatever. We all have these idealistic and very oftentimes unrealistic goals that we've set out for ourselves. And I think it's even worse in this industry. So my goal, my mission is to bring the humanness back to this industry, is really
Yeah.
to get people back in touch with what makes us uniquely beautiful and diverse and distinct and special. And I think
Yeah.
that that's really where this industry is headed, especially as we look towards wellness and the
Mm-hmm.
holistic approach. And I think that there is a return to, okay, we're not all going to look like this one person or this one ideal.
Mm-hmm.
So how am I going to be the best version of myself? And that's
Yeah.
really what I think I try to help people do in Voice of Impact, is step into the best version of themselves and own it.
Oh, I love that so much. I love to ask all of my guests, and this can be as broad or very specific as you'd like to make it, but I like to ask all my
Okay.
guests, what is beautiful to you? And I feel like that was a perfect segue.
Oh, wow. Okay. What is beautiful to me? Well, some people may not agree with this, but I do think imperfection can be really beautiful, especially when we don't hide behind it, but we say, hey, this is my authentic self, and I'm perfectly imperfect. I think that's a really, attractive quality in somebody. And just to piggyback on that is confidence. I think that the confidence to be someone who's really in their own skin
Mm-hmm.
and can really just move through their world with grace and with confidence and really just own it. I think that that's the most beautiful thing in the world. Aside from it, like, it doesn't have much to do with how they look. It's really just the energy that they bring and the confidence in their imperfections that they also bring. That's
I
what I think
totally agree
is
with you.
beautiful.
I think that as human beings, we want to be seen and we want to be
Yes.
seen as valuable. And there's something that is so refreshing, especially in today's world, not just in aesthetics, but just in general. There's this cookie cutter curated self that almost has to be like Instagrammable at all times, or I don't
Ugh.
even know, like now in video format for TikTok and everything else. And when you are vulnerable to show those imperfections confidently in a way, or confidently, not confidently, that's my favorite of like, hey, this is what's
Oh, I
going on with
love
my face
that.
today. And I am so self-conscious about this. Suddenly somebody sees you and somebody else may look at you and say, oh my gosh, you have this giant zit on your face. I didn't even notice that. No, you are so beautiful. And then they see you. So then I would feel validated, but they also feel validated in the sense of, okay, somebody else also has that self-doubt or those moments. Their
Right.
life isn't as perfect. And it's this continuation of this perfectly imperfect connection in a way. I love that. Yeah.
Love that.
Perfectly imperfect connections. That's what we're going to say is beautiful. It was so
Right. We
perfect.
agree.
I feel like this episode brought so much value. Honestly, to me, I feel like just in having the conversation, I've gotten so much out of it. And I feel like my cup has been filled up from getting my Krista time today. And I hope that the listener also has gotten that from it as well. So if somebody wants,
Can I add?
yeah,
Sorry, can I add one little thing? I actually wanted to be sure not to miss telling the viewers and the listeners about this. I'm super excited. I'm going to be leading a It Factor boot camp on November 4th, 5th, and 6th. It'll be virtual.
Yay. Yeah.
At 9 a.m. Pacific time. And it'll be 3 days of like a compounded Voice of Impact. So if you're interested in Voice of Impact, but you're not quite sure you want to jump right in, this is very low cost. It's $297. And it will be 3 days that I will lead you through. One of the big modules I'll be teaching is storytelling. So it's something I'm super passionate about. So I think that could be really exciting for anyone who just is interested in possibly creating a second line of income, or they want to master communication and just be better trainers, or maybe they do want to actually get on stage and start a podcast. So this It Factor Bootcamp is for anybody who just wants to be a more dynamic communicator. I'm excited to be teaching that.
Is this the second one that you've done? I'm sure you probably changed them with each one with, new ideas and concepts as things go. Yeah. But I remember the It Factor Bootcamp and I got so much out of it. Okay. To everybody listening, if this episode spoke to you and you're excited, you need to sign up for this bootcamp because I still have my notes. I have it in a purple folder with like everything I jotted down over the 3 days. And it was like the perfect amount of, I feel like, excitement and knowledge all together to just spark that mission. Like it gets you on your way. It's so fun.
It's a great, I do have a link for it, but I don't know. Maybe you can list it with.
Yeah, we can put it in the show notes. Or something. Absolutely. Sorry? We can put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Okay. Yeah. So if anyone wants to sign up, we'll have the link in the show notes.
I love it. And will it be recorded if somebody can't get on at that same time? So if you're signed up, you can't get on live. Oh,
yes, they'll be recorded.
I love it. Okay, pimp yourself out other than that. So how can, if they want to do the It Factor Bootcamp, or also if they want to be following along with KLC, with your page, how can they get a hold of you? Can they find you?
So they can find us on Instagram. So Kaylee.Lindholm is going to be on Instagram. That is going to be a direct link to me. You can also go to the KLC website. So that'll be klcconsultants.com. And if you want to look specifically at Voice of Impact, you could do the /VOI. So klcconsultants.com/VOI. You can also, they should tune into the Fierce Factor podcast. Kaylee has an incredible podcast with tidbits and techniques and lots of philosophical ideas about, how to be a leader in this industry and really what it takes. And it's an incredible podcast. So definitely tune into the Fierce Factor podcast. And yeah, please reach out, sign up, come to the It Factor Bootcamp.
Yes, absolutely. And on the note of the Fierce Factor podcast, actually, Katie and I were on the Fierce Factor podcast. I want to say our episode was 296 or something like that. So for all of those that know and love Katie and I, you're going to have to go and take a listen. We talk about company culture, and I feel like you really get to know Katie and I a little bit better, as well as Kaylee, and you hear our origin story from, coming together at Aesthetic Next last year. And then that will take you deep enough that then you can work your way back up through the rest of the resources of the past year. And there's just so much value and so many just masterminds that Kaylee has on. And Kaylee herself is just mind-blowingly brilliant. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Well, Krista, thank you so much for joining today. I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen. And I know that the listeners are going to be following your every move now. And you're hopefully going to have a full class next session.
And we can put my Instagram and all that stuff in the show notes too.
Yes. Yep. We'll put it everywhere. All right, everyone. We will see you next week for another episode of The Bright Side of Beauty. Have a great week.